Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. It's hot in this studio today, baby. The summer's coming. I always forget how hot it gets in here. Between all the foam on the wall, all the equipment around me. I'm going to be doing some episodes soon, shirtless at least. We have a really, really fascinating show for you today. People will say, well, this doesn't fit the whole superhuman narrative, but it does, and I'm going to explain why. We're going to talk about tribalism versus critical thinking today and why you should be worried about what's going on in the world today. Later in the show, we're going to talk about a new testing system that promises to deliver what all those epigenetic tests couldn't do. And I know we did quite a push on a company from the UK and their epigenetic testing. Everybody was disappointed because they couldn't make any suggestions about how to improve the quality of your health. Well, this is a different one, so that's later in the show. Before we get started, I have to thank our title sponsor, and that's Legendary Foods. They satisfy everything you want and desire in the case of sweet snacks, but less than 1 gram of sugar and 20 grams of high-quality, high-leucine protein. Don't miss out. I promise you, you will buy more. You will not be disappointed. shrnetwork.biz/legendary, and of course, the code is SHR10. Now, if you're somebody who likes to play a game of chance, your odds are actually very good to win a box because Ron Penna's generosity is allowing us to give away numerous boxes on every show, just like the old Quest days. If you listen during the commercial break for the secret word, email the secret word to onair@superhumanradio.net. Include your mailing address, and you will most likely be one of the lucky, receivers? No, the lucky individuals who gets a free box of cake-style tasty pastries. I get emails all day now from people who have gotten them and can't thank me enough. And of course, they're going to buy more. And that's the beauty of it. Okay, without further delay, let me get my buddy on, a guy who I look forward to spending time with whenever we do a show together, and that's Joel Greene. How you doing, Joel?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. Thank you, Carl. Good to see you, man.
So it's fascinating because I watch all of your videos on Instagram. And if you don't follow Joel on Instagram, you're really missing out because Joel is discussing aspects of building muscle and reducing body fat that you will never hear anywhere else. And how the immune system is the heavy mover in that process. No one talks about what Joel talks about. And it's not because he's just trying to find something new to throw out there. It's because they don't have the level of understanding of biochemistry in the body and physiology that Joel has. Seriously, that's the bottom line. But Joel was talking the other day about something that I didn't realize he felt passionately about. It's something I feel passionately about. And it's about the lack of critical thinking in our population today. And if you don't realize it's affecting you, you're wrong. There are large segments of this population today who do things that are not in their own best interests to be part of the tribe. And that shapes policy, it shapes laws, it shapes preferences, it shapes movements, it shapes everything that affect every one of us. So give the Reader's Digest version of this talk you gave on tribalism the other day.
Yeah, well, it stems from something I put in my book, which was to say that we live in an age where generally we think of ourselves as living in an advanced era, like the age of reason. And the age of reason, or the Enlightenment, got kicked off by Isaac Newton with his Principia Mathematica like a couple hundred years ago. And it was an era where, in general, people just began to reason a lot and use their heads and think for themselves and critically examine things. And you could make a very good case that a lot of the advancement in our world came out of that, like just from people using their heads and thinking for themselves. And so generally, that's something most people would say, yeah, of course I think for myself. What are you talking about? You think I don't think for myself? And there was a section in my book where I talked about that we live in an era and a time, unfortunately, where most people only want to hear things that make their own position more comfortable. Like they don't want to hear anything that makes their current position uncomfortable. And that is a problem, because the way that you learn and grow is by acquiring new things, new knowledge, new ideas. That's how we learn and we grow. And when you shut yourself off to that, well, then by definition, you're hurting yourself because you can't grow. You just become a nerd to whatever your system of belief is. And I see that in nutrition all the time. Like, like what I know is this much of this giant umbrella that, we're continually learning more about. So there's this fallacy that we have things figured out. There's this fallacy in science that science has things figured out. And so it's just a good position to be in. But what we have today, instead of really, the reality is that the age of reason has passed. It's passed. And that's a frightening thing, because if you just think about it, when you get rid of reason, what's left? What is left? What's left are three things. Number one is tribalism. So you're not really, by definition, if you're going to abandon reason, then you're not thinking. You're not going to think for yourself. You're just, and what you're doing ultimately is you're subverting your own individual identity for a group identity, for adherence to a tribe or a group. So that's what you get. The other thing that you get when you abandon reason is you get what's known as infantilization and parentalization. And there's some scary stuff out there talking about working towards a world where we have infantilization and parentalization. And what that is, anybody who ever grew up in a dysfunctional family,
all of us. I was going to say all of us.
Yeah,
right.
Knows that how that works. The way things work in a dysfunctional family is you're not allowed to think. You are not allowed to question. You're not allowed to think for yourself. And if you do, you're going to be attacked. And typically the mechanisms that are going to be used on you are three things. They're shaming, name calling, and blaming. That's how you hold the dysfunctional family together. Okay. So what a dysfunctional family has to do is invert reality. Good becomes evil, evil becomes good. And so it becomes like, hey, Uncle Lester, Dad, he's been going into Sissy's room at night. And then it becomes, how dare you? Shame on you. How dare you? He's not sneaking into Sissy's room. And when you come from a dysfunctional family, eventually one of two things is going to happen. You're going to stay infantilized, where you never start thinking of yourself, or you reach a point where you go, you know what, screw you. No, he's been doing it for years, and you let it happen. And I'm sick of it, and I'm not letting it happen anymore. You grow up and you start to think for yourself. And the final thing that happens when you get rid of reason is all that's left is insanity. There's nothing left when you abandon reason. What you're embracing is insanity. And at a very large scale, that's exactly what you see happening in society today. You see that we are embracing the inversion of reality. And there's no reason to anything anymore. It's just tribalism. It's just that, you know, I'm a masker, or I'm an anti-masker, or, you know, I do meat, and, you know, I do plants. You know, it's just tribes warring against each other. And the problem with that is that people, like a person, an individual, can think. Herds and tribes don't really think. They just do dumb stuff. And the bigger the herd, the bigger the tribe, the dumber the stuff. So these are, hey, Carl. Yeah, of course, my audio cuts out. This is weird. Out and
It's not the most intelligent person that rises to the top of leadership. This is a reality. This is why the movie Idiocracy was so popular, because the people that were running the country at that point in time were just dumb. They were watering. Here, Joel's coming back. Here, let me get him back on here.
All right, I'll have to do this without my mic, but I don't know what happened. You started talking, and
No, and you sound fine. So what I was saying was, and often this phenomenon is that it's not always the smartest or the most intelligent person that rises to the official level of leadership in tribes. Otherwise, the movie Idiocracy would have never been such a big hit, where they were watering crops with Mountain Dew and they couldn't figure out why it wasn't growing. And an average intelligence guy who reasoned fixed their problems. So that's the scary part. The scary part is, in almost all tribes, it's the least ethical, it's the least intelligent individual that rises to the top, because most intelligent, critical thinking people don't think of themselves as, I want to lead all these people. They just want to be left alone and live their lives and do things based on how they want to do them.
yeah, most the average person just cannot understand. I think that there's a very, very minute, tiny minute percentage of people that are super brilliant, that don't think like average people, and you know, they have their own sort of like idea of how the world should be, and part of that involves you not thinking. That's just the truth. It involves you not thinking, and the way to get that is you're either a person in this day and age. You're either a person or you're a software distribution node. And that is one of the truest things you're ever going to hear. You are either your own person, coming to your own conclusions about things after really examining ideas and going, does that really hold up to scrutiny? I don't care what the credentials are of the guy telling me that. You know, does that hold up? Does that make sense, what they're saying? Or you're just a distribution. You're a piece of software. You're just mouthing other ideas stuck in your head. And the way you get there is you divide people into groups. You divide them into groups and tribes, and that's how you get that done. That's how that works.
And by the more tribes you create, the more fragmented the population, the less likely they are to do things that will challenge the powers that be, because they don't want to be called names, as you pointed out. They don't want to be blamed. They don't want to be attacked. So they just stay in their little silo, and they nod their head yes, and then they repeat the words that they heard, and they carry this out. And the real problem with this is today that we have all seen in our population today examples of what I like to call fact-resistant humans. These are human beings who, when faced with literal facts, you know, like, okay, before COVID, there were studies showing that these surgical masks produced no protection for surgeons to get viruses from patients. There have been 2008, there was a really groundbreaking study done that showed that they really don't produce any benefits for the transmitter or the receiver. They have been removed from access because they challenge what the tribal kings are telling us. Anytime they remove something, if you're a critical thinker, you go, wait a minute. But if you're a tribal person, you're like, yeah, get that out of here because it doesn't agree with us.
Yeah, that goes funny. I'm sure you've probably heard this sort of the emerging sort of bit of data that quite possibly the jab and the vaccine can shed, that it can be spread.
Right. Right.
So I was actually had to go to an emergency room yesterday, not for myself, but for a family member. And I'm in there, I'm wearing a mask, and I'm sitting there, and I don't know if you've ever tried on an N95, like a legit.
I can't breathe through it.
You can't breathe.
Yeah, I can't breathe through it.
I mean, they just literally form a seal, and you cannot breathe. And so the standard is you have to wear an N95 and then a level 3 over it, and that is rated at 99%, not 100%. So N95, then level 3. Well, I've tried that. I can't breathe. You cannot get air. So I'm sitting in this emergency room thinking, well, just about everybody here is probably vaccinated. And geez, I've got this little toilet paper mask on, and it's it doesn't seal on the sides.
Right.
And I'm sitting there thinking, this is absolutely ridiculous. This thing is offering me no protection if people are shedding. And I was just thinking, like, this is just basically compliance, herd compliance. The irony with all that, you have kids, the irony of that is that all parents teach their kids not to bow to peer pressure. You teach them, like, hey, don't bow to peer pressure, be your own person, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's exactly what runs society today. Yeah, yes, and that's exactly what we see today, is just an entire society that is compliant through name calling, shaming, and peer pressure. We transplanted the exact same dynamics of the dysfunctional family, and now they run society. And the way that that's true is through the infantilization of the populace, and you see it everywhere. Like I'm driving in my car, and my car's treating me like I'm a kindergartner. It's like, maintain eyes on the road, maintain safe travel distance. You can't do anything without being infantilized, maintain safe social distance, boys and girls. Everything is about you taking this sort of parental advice, even though you're a full-grown adult. And so we are actively discouraged to think.
Well, and we just talked about this last week or the week before, that doctors treat patients like they're too stupid to care for themselves. And they prescribe drugs that will override your bad decisions, as opposed to talking to you about changing your bad choices, because they feel like, well, you're too stupid. You won't do what I tell you. So just take these pills and continue to live broken, but just not notice anything. Thank you.
Yeah. That's funny you say that. Just personally, like everything that I do with respect to what I've done in, health, nutrition, biohacking space is 100% because I've had too many bad experiences trusting the person on the other end and not asking the right questions and not thinking for myself. And I've hurt my own health from that. I give an example recently about an antibiotic I took in 2014. It crippled me, like nearly took out my Achilles, couldn't walk for 2 months. And so the ability to, like, I just don't, if some authority figure tells me something, I just want to check it out for myself and do all my research and come to my own conclusions on it. But what you have today is the exact opposite. You have parentalization, where you get, I don't know, I just know what my doctor told me, or right. I don't know, I just know what the authority tells me.
Right.
That's what runs society now.
So let's look at some lack of critical thinking, some evidence of tribalism in our population today. As you pointed out, the mask, the jab, but also racism, in my humble opinion. Okay, and I've said this before, and I would challenge someone to tell me I'm wrong. Black rappers sell music to predominantly white kids. Number one. Lil Wayne said this, and they put him in jail for it. LeBron James gets paid the money he gets paid to play basketball because there are lots of white people sitting in those seats. Obama could not have been elected for 2 terms if more white people than brown people voted for him. If they didn't vote for him, and they did. So what happens is that in the tribalism is we have systemic racism. The United States is the most racist country in the world, when all of the obvious evidence shows that to be a lie, and no one challenges it, because the tribe says you say this or you're a racist. We're touching the third rail right now, believe it or not, just because we're saying these truths. These are friggin' truths. I challenge anybody to prove to me that I'm wrong about Obama being voted into office, or LeBron James contracts being aided by all the white people, and the rap stars selling all their music to white kids. Prove that's wrong. It's not.
You just came right to the fence of one of the tactics used today to get people to not think for themselves, called Overton's window. And for those of you not familiar, Overton's window it's a tactic. What it is it's like a corral, and within that corral, you can talk about anything you want to talk about. Go ahead, that's fine, but you can't go outside that corral. And if you do, you're going to be attacked. And you're going to be attacked with dysfunctional family tactics, name calling, shaming, you're a racist, you're a, and so this takes us right to the edge of Overton's window, which is a mind control tactic, because we're not allowed to talk about this kind of stuff. And this is the way that your individuality, your ability to reason and think, is stripped from you. Because if you don't have the ability to, let's take your thoughts and your ideas and examine them critically, see if they hold up to scrutiny. Maybe we might learn something. If we don't have the ability to do that, then yeah, we're just part of a herd. We're just sort of in a tribe, and we're subjugated, and we have to defend the tribe. That's your main job. You've given up, you become software. So I feel kind of like I can comment on that one a little bit, just because. So my great grandfather was Black, and I spent my first 8 years in a ghetto, a Black ghetto, Seaside, California, housing project. Mm-hmm. And I've always been really light skinned and blue eyes, and, straight dark hair. So I've always had it on the receiving end of like, oh, you privileged white punk. You don't know what it's like. You've been privileged your whole life. You don't know what it's like to suffer. And it's like, and it was exactly the opposite.
Right. And I'm sure that being someone who grew up in a Black neighborhood and has tons of Black friends who I actually have love for, that I learned to love when I was a little kid, before we even knew anything about racism and race. But the reality is that you were probably picked on because you were white.
My best friend was Black, and he was told, you got to stop hanging around with that white guy. We got jumped one day by 13 Black dudes, because he was hanging around with a white guy. And he was my best friend. And so it was actually the reverse. But, my experience in life is very similar to yours. Like, I just, in one-on-one dealings with people, I just haven't found that most people judge you based on the melanin concentration in your skin. They don't, like most of us, I think, are pretty forgiving. Like, we look at a person based on who they are, based on their heart and their character. And that's how we make our evaluations, Now, that might not be true in groups, in herds. That's not true. I think in when you get into tribalism, then yeah, definitely you have issues. But I think on the individual level, that in my experience in life, if anything, I can just say I've been more on the receiving end of kind of the reverse of that, just because people perceive me to be one way, and that was not true. It was not my lifestyle.
Right. So you're kind of an enigma. You know what I mean? It's like. You don't fit the mold, and so they're like, wait a minute, this guy is different. I'm the same way. I mean, I'm 14% Northern African, but I always thought that I was Black when I was a kid, up until I was 14 years old, and I moved out of Brooklyn. I related more so to Black people than I did to white people. I didn't have hardly any white friends, so I didn't. It was, and that actually was a blessing. I loved the fact that I grew up that way, because it's given me a perspective on life that allows me to see people and not colors, not skin color. I know when people say, well, I'm colorblind. I'm not saying that. I know you're Black if I'm looking at you and you're Black. but it doesn't overlay in my choices and my decisions and how I interact with them.
Yeah, I think that's true of most people. My experience, but it's just most people like in a transaction with someone. I haven't in my life, my own personal experience. I haven't noted that most people are coming at it from this sort of like prejudice point of view. And I'm sure that's out. It's definitely out there. I'm not saying it's not.
Oh, no doubt. But I mean, look. There's bad butchers. There's bad police officers. There's bad bakers. There's bad, everything. And there's bad white people. There's bad black people. There's bad Latino people. And this is what we can blame a lot of the segregation today, the psychological segregation today, on politics, because they want to be able to set you up in a silo so that you follow the tribe and you vote for them. So then so the reality is, if you follow politics at all and society, black people aren't voting Democrat like they used to. There's a lot of conservative black people today. And why? Because they're getting it. They're like, wait a minute, once every 4 years, they kiss our asses and then they disappear. Our neighborhoods don't get any better. Our job opportunities don't get any better. This is not working for us. Let's try something else. In fact, Trump said that. What do you got to lose? If I'm the same way that they are, things just stay status quo. But the reality is that because the left is losing hold on the black vote, and they are, now they're fragmenting us into new silos, LBGT, transgender, and they do this on purpose because it's easier to get people to vote as a block if you put them into a silo and they belong to part of a tribe.
This is how you subjugate a people. I talked about this in my Instagram video on tribalism. Most people are not familiar with what's called the reductions. The reductions was a system of subjugation that the Jesuits employed to subjugate the Indians. And, generally speaking, it's not hard. It's not easy to do. It's not an easy thing to subjugate a person. Like if you're a parent, this, like very hard to get a kid to get them to do what you want them to do. So when you look at the history of subjugation, there's quite a bit of thought that's been put into it, to make it enforceable. And there's some consistent things in the picture. There's some commonalities. One of those is that you have got to get rid of their identity. You've got to get rid of the identity of the subjugatee as an individual, and you've got to give them a new identity that supplants that as part of the tribe or part of the group. And these are concepts foreign to most people, but they're very well studied to people that want subjugation. And so that's the danger, the real danger, like to you, the individual in a society where there's this ongoing attempt to divide people into groups and categories so you can get them pitted against each other. Really, the danger is that you're going to lose you. You lose you, because if you're not your thoughts, if you're not your ideas, but you're the ideas stuck in your head through, whatever, then what are you? Like what are you then? If you don't have that, that's all you have. All you have is your brain and your reason, the ability to reason. And so it's something you have to fight for. You have to, when you're in a society that's adopted the same tactics as the dysfunctional family, which is if you step outside of Overton's window and you step outside of being infantilized and you try and be a full-grown adult and think for yourself and go based on reason, like, well, it doesn't make sense. Why would I do this? This doesn't make sense. And you'll hear that all the time today. Like, everything we're being told to do, it doesn't make sense. Why would I do something that doesn't make sense? Inevitably, what you're going to see in every case is you're attacked with name calling, shaming, and blaming. How dare you? You're not doing your part. You're anti this, anti, and it's, again, if you, having grown up in a dysfunctional family, you finally reach a point where you're like, you know what?
I'm done.
I'm done with this.
Yeah.
I'm not going with this anymore.
But a lot of people aren't. That's the scary part. I want to take a break. And when we come back, I want to use an extreme analogy of what happens when tribalism takes over critical thinking. And this analogy, I think you'll get a kick out of. We're going to take one quick commercial break. We'll be right back with more of Joel Greene. Stay tuned. New wellness trend. Eat that. Do this. Avoid those. How do you know where to start or who to trust? Inside Tracker helps you cut through the noise by analyzing your blood, your DNA, your lifestyle, and your fitness tracker to provide you with a science-backed, trackable action plan on how to live, age, and perform better. Personalized, one-size-fits-one recommendations to help you optimize you. For a limited time, Inside Tracker is offering Superhuman Radio listeners 25% off the entire store. Go to shrnetwork.biz/inside tracker, INSIDETRACKER, to save 25% off. Change begins on the inside. Whether your goal is to build muscle or burn fat, you'll find everything you need at Redcon One. Need help getting a good night's sleep? Try Fade Out, or the most popular pre-workout supplement on the market today, Total War. Sign up for their new Transformation Challenge and win $10,000, or shop for apparel that people at the gym will know that you are serious about your training. Need a testosterone booster that works? Check out Boomstick. Whatever you need, you'll find the best quality supplements on the market at Redcon One. Go to redcon1.com. That's REDCON1.com, or go to superhumanradio.net and click the Redcon One banner ads today. Inside Tracker. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High quality, pasture raised, great tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose to tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/white oak and use code SHR20 to save 20% off your entire first order. TaylorMade Health is focused on making sure you're able to perform and look your best. They are a leader in game-changing supplements and cosmetic products. Whether you want to increase strength, expedite recovery, facilitate soft tissue repair, or reduce deep wrinkles, TaylorMade Health has you covered. TaylorMade Health is also the home to Dr. Seed's products such as BPC, BPC Plus, and the Chill Pill. All of my listeners can now get 20% off their first order with code TRY20. That's TRY20. This code can even be used on subscription orders. Visit shrnetwork.biz/try20 today and use code TRY20 for 20% off your first order. Do you remember those delicious toaster pastries you had when you were a kid? You know, the rectangular sugar-filled snacks? Well, guess what? Legendary Foods has just made low-carb toaster pastry. This is the first of its kind, and honestly, these things are amazing. They have 3 to 4 net carb, less than 1 gram of sugar, and 9 grams of protein. You can eat them right out of the wrapper or lightly toast them. The only question is, which flavor? Strawberry or brown sugar cinnamon? They're available at eatlegendary.com and Amazon.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
This is the Superhuman Channel, doing reps with the weight of the world.
Welcome back. I got to give a quick shout out to a company that sponsors here on Superhuman Radio. They're called Care Of. They're a vitamin and supplement company. If you're somebody who buys vitamins online, you're probably like me. You've got boxes and boxes of vitamins and supplements that you purchased for some reason, but you forgot because you haven't taken them in a long time. What Care Of does is they have a really great, very in-depth quiz online. You know, you go to a practitioner and they look at you and they go, oh, this is what you need. And then they tell you what you should be taking. But we don't do that with supplements, right? We hear a show, we see a magazine ad, we go, oh, that sounds good, that sounds good. Before you know, we have all these supplements we don't take. Care Of will help you drill down to what you need exclusively for you. They have a very, very fun and in-depth quiz that you'll learn so much about yourself online for free. You don't have to pay a practitioner to help you with it. All of their products are formulated with clean ingredients that are backed by science, clinical trials and such. And their prices are ridiculous. They're fantastic. But more importantly, if you are somebody who's like me, who's keep having false starts and then you stop, and you can go to Care Of take the quiz, and buy the vitamins and minerals and supplements that they recommend and save 50%. That's ridiculous. Half off. This is like wholesale. How do you do that? All you have to do is go to the website, takecareof.com, and use the code SHR50 for Superhuman Radio 50 and get 50% off your order and give it a try. And regardless of whether you ever do business with them again, you'll have all the information from the quiz to move forward with. But I can assure you, they're going to not only get you to try stuff, but they're going to win you over with the products and the prices that they offer. Again, go to takecareof.com and use the code SHR50 to save 50% off your order. This is a great site. Check it out. Takecareof.com, code SHR50 for 50% off. Okay. So now, with that out of the way, as promised, I'm going to give you a very, very interesting analogy that shows you. So right now, you're probably part of a tribe. You're Catholic. You're a vegan. You got the vaccine. You didn't get the vaccine. You're part of a tribe. I'm sure of it. And you can tell how close you are to that tribe if some of the things that I'm saying have made you want to tune out. Or if you're talking to me right now, listening to the show and going, Carl, you're a jerk. Because what I'm saying to you is you can stay part of that tribe, but make the decisions based on critical thinking to be part of that tribe, not the fear of being ostracized, losing friends. Like, I have somebody who called me recently and said, I'm going to get the vaccine. And I said, but you had COVID and you have antibodies. Yeah, but my friends are pressuring me to get the vaccine. That's a horrible reason to get the vaccine. It's a stupid reason to get the vaccine. And if your friends have that kind of control over you, then you're going to have lots of problems in your life that you're going to blame on other people because you're going to make decisions that have nothing to do with you. So here's the analogy. We're all on a ship. We're traveling around the world. And the captain of the ship is a bit of an asshole. So one night we all get together and we say, let's sink the ship and really screw this guy. And then the critical thinker in the group goes, wait a minute, we'll die too if we sink the ship. And then the tribal leaders take over and say, are you not with us or not? What are you? And they shout you down and they henpeck you down. And you go back to your room that night. You think, F these people, man. I'm taking one of those lifeboats and I'm getting off now. This is an extreme example. But the reality is what's playing out today in the United States and around the world are bad decisions, bad choices, because people don't want their tribe to get pissed off at them. And it's affecting food policy. It's affecting health. It's affecting business ownership. It's affecting life in general. And it's not going to change until enough critical thinkers step up and say, F it, I'm done. I'm not part of this tribe anymore. I may be gay. I may be black. I may be a Catholic, but I'm thinking for myself. You can't influence me. Until that happens, this population may be destined for self-extinction.
You just touched right on the heart of the problem, which is that when you abdicate reason, when you get away from reason, which is, and it's said by another name, is what makes sense. Well, there's like really good reasons to embrace reason in life. The biggest reason is life and death. That's why we got to come back to the basics here. Okay. The reason is a good idea. The reason common sense is a good idea is because reason and common sense bring life. Insanity brings death. And there may be a delay between the time you get away from reason and sound thinking, but the inevitable conclusion always is going to be death. Now, that's true of an individual. It's true of societies at large. It's when a society embraces what is insane, what's going to come is a whole bunch of death. And there's historical precedents for this. There are societies that have gone off the rails, and what you see is mass level death. Well, that's coming if we don't, as a society, begin to say to the dysfunctional family that's trying to force you under pressure, name calling, shaming, blaming, to do the same stuff you grew out of. Like, did you really spend your entire life to get out of the dysfunctional family only to submit to it again? Because really what's at stake again here is you and your identity. Your identity as a free thinking human. There's a nice little experiment that I like to do, because most of us like to think that we think for ourselves. But there's actually an experiment that I can step us through here at about 60 seconds, where what you're going to see is your conditioning conflicting with your thinking. And then the net result of it will be you will default to tribalism and you will attack. And the reason you'll attack is not because there isn't truth to what I'm saying. It's because your own mind is creating cognitive dissonance, and the way to resolve it is to attack. Because you've been trained not to think. So let's do this. Here we go. Okay. Carl, you don't have to answer, but it's a good exercise. Okay, so number one, a greener planet is good. Yes or no? Yeah, most people probably.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, okay, greener planet is good. Okay. Global warming is bad. Yes or no?
Well, that's not a yes or no question to me, because we've had global warming in our past.
Okay, you think for yourself, but the average person would say it's bad.
Bad, right?
The warmer the planet, is it going to be more green or less green?
Okay.
Probably going to be more green, right? So global warming is good or bad?
Wow.
Okay, now carbon dioxide is bad. Yes or no? Most people will say yes, right? So the more carbon dioxide, is the planet more green or less green?
More green. Ask anybody who grows weed for a living.
More green. So a greener planet is good, yes or no? Yes. So the more carbon dioxide, the greener the planet. Yes. Now the cognitive dissonance is kicking in big time. Okay, and what most people are feeling is their programming fighting against their mind.
Yeah, wait a minute. Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So your thinking, reasoning mind, it's still there, but it's subjugated and it's fighting against, because I just stepped you through a very easy chain of events where you can just think for yourself and completely overturn everything you've been subjugated to and just go, wait a second, that doesn't make sense. But now you've stepped out of Overton's window. Now you're not allowed to think this stuff. So the solution is to get back in the corral and attack. So the solution is get back in the corral and attack the tribal, attack the other tribe. Oh, well, you must be you must be this, you must, name calling, blaming, shaming. And so with this little experiment, you can readily see how these structures are present to subjugate free thought. And it's very easy to see.
But the other thing that I see here is something that you've talked about for years before anybody else, and that is baby talk. So I feel like tribalism depends on a level of intellect that will accept baby talk. Greener planet good, carbon dioxide bad, and everything is so much more complex than that. But if it's only complex if you're a critical thinker, if you're a free thinker, if you can explore the dichotomy of concepts side by side and go, well, it's not good or bad. And so, but we're not allowed to do that when we're part of the tribe. We have to accept baby talk.
Yeah. Part of that, it just gets to, I think, the fact that you're not allowed to think for yourself. You're really not in this age that we're in. And you really should, because when you have a society based on quote unquote free speech, allegedly, well, the only way you can know what's true from what isn't true is called the arena of ideas. And that's where we bring ideas in and we kick them around and we scrutinize them and we scrutinize them and we scrutinize them. And sometimes those ideas seem like they're winning, maybe for a while, but then something new comes along and we realize, oh my gosh, no, that idea totally missed it. And so the way that we get to what's true is through scrutiny. When you're not allowed to scrutinize things, when you're not allowed to parse the finer nuances of things, then you can't think, you can't reason, you can't think for yourself. And so that's a big part of things.
Yeah, no, it's really, and this is a big problem. I know that it sounds like people are listening to this and going, oh, this is really not interesting. I like to hear about something that reverses aging or lowers mTOR. But this is at the core of a lot of misinformation. Go ahead.
This is such a huge problem in that arena. I mean, okay, let's talk about this for a second. We're in an era where most people have been completely bamboozled by total BS. Okay. Like, you don't know what to think. You don't know what to think because you don't know what's true. And most of what you've been told is just total horse crap. It really is. I don't say that as like some guy who's trying to outcompete everybody else for, listen only to me. I say that as a consumer who like spent 20, 30 years being bamboozled, and I'm not listening to this crap anymore. Like, I'm gonna figure out what's right for myself. And I can tell you most of what people get indoctrinated into is horse crap. And it happens every single day. Every single day. Happened to me today. So I was on a podcast the other day, and I was pointing out the long-term impact of high protein diets, that there's pros, there's cons. There's a lot of pros in the short term, all kinds of pros. But long-term, there's well-documented negatives, insulin resistance, dyslipidemia, a bunch of things. So an alleged expert jumps on and goes, this is disinformation. There's no evidence for this. Like, I have a stack of links this big. I sent him one, which was a review study, which was a compendium of 83 different studies showing this, okay? And this is a perfect example of like, well, you obviously have absolutely no idea what you're talking about, and you're out there influencing people who don't know that you don't know what you're talking about. So you have two options here. You can up your game because you've just been schooled.
Right.
Or you can stay stupid. What are you going to do? And then you can make other people stupid.
I've apologized for getting things wrong over the past 16 years so many times, but I'm not an expert. That's the problem. I don't make a living being an expert. So I'm allowed to be wrong, but there's a lot of people out there who consider themselves experts and gurus who stop learning, and or let's say they learn up to this point, and that's when they throw their guruship into high gear. Yeah. And now, Rob Wolf, I got to commend Rob Wolf. Rob Wolf was telling people to take 10, 12 grams of omega-3s a day back in the day when the whole paleo movement started. And then he came back later on and said, you don't need that much. It turns out you don't need that much. But Rob could have been a different guy. He could have just defended his fiefdom and said, no, that's it. You got to stay with that, because, and that's why true leaders are perpetual students. They don't position themselves as leaders or teachers. They position themselves as perpetual students. You learn something new, it change your direction in your belief system. That's allowable.
It's tough. It's tough because a lot of people have painted themselves into a corner by saying, so there's this thing in our industry of saying,
wait, you broke up. Saying what?
Saying things that are clickbait.
Yes.
Clickbait.
Okay.
Saying things that are sort of outrageous and novel.
Yes.
And there's truth to them, but they're distorted, and there's things left out. So, well, the problem with that is that you can paint yourself into a corner with that, because if you're saying something that is kind of true, but it's not really true, and therefore you deviate from truth, eventually we're going to always come back to what's true, and you've painted yourself into a corner with that thing. So the thing about this whole field that we're in is we don't understand how the body works. Like, we don't understand how the body works. The history of science is the history of being completely wrong while thinking we were totally right. And every day, like every single day, I get humbled because I run across every single day.
Right. And I want to finish the show up talking about that. I want to talk about some things that you brought. IRS one. I want to talk about some of the other proteins you've discussed recently in your Instagram chats, and plug the book, The Immunity Code, when we come back from this break. How's that sound? Can you hear me?
Hey, Carl. Yep, it happened again. I don't know if it's the transmission.
Okay, we're gonna take a break. We're gonna take a break. Sit tight. We'll be right back. Sit tight. and an important element for every superhuman. Because of this, I want you to experience the power of award-winning Seluma light therapy. Seluma utilizes NASA research technology. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High-quality, pasture-raised, great-tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose-to-tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/white oak and use code SHR20 to save 20% off your entire first order. Inside Tracker. Every day, there's a new wellness trend. Eat that. Do this. Avoid those. How do you know where to start or who to trust? Inside Tracker helps you cut through the noise by analyzing your blood, your DNA, your lifestyle, and your fitness tracker to provide you with a science-backed, trackable action plan on how to live, age, and perform better. Personalized, one-size-fits-one recommendations to help you optimize you. For a limited time, Inside Tracker is offering Superhuman Radio listeners 25% off the entire store. Go to shrnetwork.biz/inside tracker, INSIDETRACKER, to save 25% off. Change begins on the inside. Whether your goal is to build muscle or burn fat, you'll find everything you need at Redcon One. Need help getting a good night's sleep? Try Fade Out, or the most popular pre-workout supplement on the market today, Total War. Sign up for their new Transformation Challenge and win $10,000, or shop for apparel that people at the gym will know that you are serious about your training. Need a testosterone booster that works? Check out Boomstick. Whatever you need, you'll find the best quality supplements on the market at Redcon One. Go to redcon1.com. That's REDCON1.com, or go to superhumanradio.net and click the Redcon One banner ad today. You've heard us talk about the power of copper peptides here on the show. Now try it yourself with RestoraCell's amazing new skincare line built on the power of blue copper peptides. All natural, organic, made in the USA, and safe for sensitive skin. Save 30% on their Stem Cell Awakening Serum. Go to shrnetwork.biz/RestoraCell. That's RESTORACELL. And use code SHR to save 30% off. Remodel your skin today. If there is one mineral you should be worried about not getting enough of, it's magnesium. Magnesium is the body's master mineral, powering over 300 critical reactions, including detoxification, fat metabolism, energy, and even digestion is influenced by the presence of magnesium. That's why I'm so excited to tell you about a new magnesium product I've been taking now called Magnesium Breakthrough. It's the ultimate magnesium supplement, easily the best I've ever seen or experienced. With all 7 forms of magnesium, I was able to arrange an amazing deal for my audience, and I guarantee it's the best deal available on this product. Seriously, with volume discounts combined with our custom 10% coupon code SHR10, you can save up to 40% off select packages of Magnesium Breakthrough. And I promise that this deal is only available on this specific website, magbreakthrough.com/SHR. You won't find that deal on Amazon or even on the company's own website. Go to magbreakthrough.com/SHR and use code SHR10 to save up to 40% off select packages of Magnesium Breakthrough.
You're listening to the Superhuman Channel. Don't hate us because we feel good.
Welcome back. We were supposed to have a second guest today, but I don't think they're showing up. They should have been online by now. We were going to talk about a new product called Inside Tracker that I'm really impressed with. I do want to talk about immunity code more. You've been pointing out some things on Instagram that I'm sure a lot of gurus are running back and trying to find crib notes on and catch up really quick that influence both fat loss and new muscle. And can you talk about one of them was IRS-1? I only remember that one because it's tax season. But the other one was, I want to say IF something.
Well, let's see. The IRS-1 discussion has to do with glucose transport and how glucose transport actually works. So insulin receptor substrate is a family of proteins. There's 6 of them, but 2 primarily in skeletal muscle that do the heavy lifting. And when you look at the etiology of insulin resistance, which affects everything else, what you see in a lot of cases is that that's where the ball gets dropped. That's where the baton gets dropped. And so the reason I put that up on Instagram was there's some clickbait out there about the idea that sugar is not a bad thing, doesn't it's not involved in cancer onset, things like that. And so that's an example of what we're talking about. Well, does that really hold up to scrutiny? Like, is that really true? Does it, like, here's my take on it. I'm not saying I'm right. Please show me I'm wrong. But to the extent of my understanding, here's how sugar mechanistically can be shown to potentiate cancer. And it's all immune centric. It has to do with the way sugar affects bacteria in the gut, and the way those bacteria affect immune cells in the gut, and the way those immune cells translocate to body fat, and the way that once they're in body fat, they basically can impair insulin function, and the way that signal propagation, these inflammatory signals in general, can impair insulin or glucose transport. And so the insulin receptor substrate 1 is kind of where the link in the chain breaks, and it has to do with, to move glucose into the cell is not really fully understood. Like, there might be people that want you to think, well, it's very simple. It's just the GLUT4 proteins, and
right,
that's how that works. But it's actually not fully known. We don't 100% understand it. But parts that seem to make a lot of sense.
And let's say something. I'm turning into a ghost here, and I'll fix that. Let's say something here. Something as important as glucose transport to survival. You would think, oh, that sucks. I don't know. It says you're mute. I think you're. Are you muted?
One second here. One sec.
Good. Just log off and log back on. That's okay. That's okay. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
What's going on here? I am going to just get back in here.
Yeah, take your time. Take your time. Because this is an important discussion. We have to touch on all this. Can you hear me, Joel?
Okay, 1 second, Carl.
Okay. What I was going to say, and I'll say it now, and then I'll repeat it when Joel gets here, is that something as important as glucose transport can't be a single pathway. When we look at things that are critical for life, when we look at things that are critical for life and critical for survival, we know that they're never a single pathway. Can you hear me, Joel? Joel, you hear me?
Yep.
What I was saying was, when we talk about glucose transport, it's talking about something that's critical for human survival. And in my experience, anything that is critical, the body has numerous ways of affecting that pathway, of getting that glucose into the cell, because it's so critical to survival. So the idea that there's just this one way that glucose gets into the cell, and one way only, is actually insulting to the backup systems the body has for survival.
Well, this is one of those topics that is super, super complex. But when it comes to muscle, when it comes to key tissues, when it comes to let's talk about muscle and adipose mass.
Okay.
Everything seems to converge around the insulin receptor. Okay. So for anything to get done, the insulin receptor has to activate. And for the insulin receptor to activate it, it really depends a lot on tyrosine residues, tyrosine phosphatase residues. And these residues form essentially scaffolds. They form these structures that are very, very specific, very complex. And when inflammation is present, it interrupts the structure of this scaffolding. And it's sort of, when that happens, you've got two pathways to transport. You get two things that happen when glucose moves into a cell. One is metabolic in its nature. So in the metabolic pathway, what happens is glucose is transported in, and then cells do what they will with it. They convert it to energy, do what they will. But the other pathway is growth centric. So that's the mitogenic MAPK pathway, mitogenic activated protein kinase, which controls cell cycle progression. So the issue with glucose transport, when it becomes interrupted, is the metabolic pathway gets disrupted. So you're not transporting glucose, but not the growth pathways. Growth pathways are activated and they stay on. So you're forcing cell cycle progression forward. Now, you can get into arguments about that depends on availability of substrate and blah, 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 and all this stuff. So, it's not a simple thing. But mechanistically speaking, all this stuff kind of points to like, you can pretty much demonstrate that a disruption of insulin function very much can potentiate cancer, because when cells are in a perpetual state of growth and the mitogenic phase is activated, telling cells to grow and continue to divide, well, that's part and parcel to cancer onset.
Right.
So, yeah, and so to understand
and let's also mention that on this show I did in 2006, that glucose signaling is responsible for cellular senescence. And when we talk about cellular senescence, we're talking about cells that break, the mitochondria break, and they lose the apoptotic influence. So they're going to stick around for as long as they can. So if you turn on this growth promoting pathway, and you also say to a cell, hey, you don't have to die anymore, you basically have cancer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so. And the thing to understand is that energy production and growth are intrinsically go together. They're one and the same. So whenever substrate is available for growth, then cells have the signaling they need to move through the progression of cell cycles. The other thing is that energy levels or power output in a cell has sort of a meter. And when that meter that meter controls key decisions of the cell. So if it goes too low, then it's a signal to the cell to die. So if the cell's total power output is below a certain level, then, well, let's just get rid of this one. It's not working. But through all these different metabolic pathways that are available, what can happen is cells have backup plans. They can make energy in a number of different ways. In fact, Warburg metabolism, what's really interesting and very much immune-centric is, I think this is what you were talking about, was hypoxia-inducible factor. The presence of oxygen is essential to produce energy. And so when cells don't have enough oxygen, then they switch to a number of different backup plans to make energy. And they switch into Warburg metabolism, glycolysis. But the really interesting thing is that the presence of hypoxia proteins in the cell can regulate cancer cells to jump between OXPHOS and Warburg metabolism. So cancer cells aren't limited. They're not limited to glycolysis alone.
In fact, would you agree with the statement that cancer cells are highly evolved cells?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. They're just they are cells where the process of growth has lost its normal checks and balances, and they are effectively immortal.
Yeah, that's why I say they're highly evolved cells. I can see Jonathan. We are going to have our second interview, by the way, for those of you who've been waiting around. Just sit tight, Jonathan. We'll have you on shortly. So the other thing that you talked about was the immune system being a promoter of muscle growth and almost an anabolic contribution. Talk about that real briefly.
Well, so basically, the purpose of the Immunity Code book was to create a new paradigm that was more correct than the one we have. And in that new paradigm, it's to elevate our understanding that the deepest layer of control over the body has to do with immune mechanisms. It's immune mechanisms that ultimately control things like your fat mass and ultimately even things like muscle growth. So if you think about it, when you get in a workout and you essentially train, you're creating more or less what you can call an injury to these myofibers. You're creating essentially an injury, and the immune system mediates the repair of that. And so when you look at muscle growth and how muscles work, you find that number one, you cannot separate muscle growth from circulation. They cannot be separated. They're one and the same. If you look at aged populations and you can restore circulation, you can restore the ability to grow muscle. Well, circulation has a whole heck of a lot to do with immune cells and immune signals and mixes of things. And then the repair process for muscle is very much immune centric because it touches on things like cell cycle progression itself, which is governed by sort of immune signals and inflammatory signals. And so there's just as a concept, as a foundational way of understanding at the deepest way, like how do we affect these things? Control over immune cells, control over macrophages, control over immune signals is like it's a foundational thing that the whole thing's built on. It's the truest thing you could say of all this.
Yeah. So maybe the immune system and its changes as we age have a bigger role to do with older people having trouble adding muscle than the anabolic hormones. Would you say that, or wouldn't go that far?
I think that they go hand in hand. Okay. I think they go hand in hand because the ability of muscle to renew as we age has a lot to do with satellite cell function and satellite cells, pools and reservoirs working, but that has everything to do with immune function.
Right.
So you can't renew muscle. You can have all the hormones in the world, but if your satellite cells aren't there, you can't renew muscle. Conversely, you can have all the satellite cells in the world, but if you have no hormones, you can't build muscle. Yeah. So they kind of work together. That's how I would call it. The book is called Immunity Code. You can get it at Veep Nutrition, VEEP nutrition.com. Elisa is reading it now and says that she has to reread pages because every single paragraph has 10 times the information that you get from the average book author, because Joel's brain just works so much better than the rest of us. That's all there is to it. That's all I can say. Yeah, maybe it's the autism. I don't know.
Yeah, you know what? I think I'm a little on the spectrum too, so that's cool. All right, look, I want to thank you for making time out of your busy schedule to come on the show and talk about critical thinking and tribalism today. Thank you.
Thanks a bunch, man. It was fun.
We'll talk soon.
Take care.
All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, going to talk about a new way to not only track your body's progress if you are somebody who wants to age better and be healthier, but also influence the choices that you make to improve your health. This is fascinating to me because we've talked a lot about epigenetic testing, and we had epigenetic testing companies on here. And the one thing they all lack, while they can tell you your biological age, is none of them could tell you what to change. They basically say, oh, well, change some things and then run a test again. This is going to be a game changer. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Superhuman Radio. Every day, there's a new wellness trend. Eat that, do this, avoid those. How do you know where to start or who to trust? Inside Tracker helps you cut through the noise by analyzing your blood, your DNA, your lifestyle, and your fitness tracker to provide you with a science-backed, trackable action plan on how to live, age, and perform better. Personalized, one-size-fits-one recommendations to help you optimize you. For a limited time, Inside Tracker is offering Superhuman Radio listeners 25% off the entire store. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Inside Tracker, INSIDETRACKER, to save 25% off. Change begins on the inside. Inside Tracker. Do you remember those delicious toaster pastries you had when you were a kid? You know, the rectangular sugar-filled snacks? Well, guess what? Legendary Foods has just made low-carb toaster pastry. This is the first of its kind, and honestly, these things are amazing. They have 3 to 4 net carb, less than 1 gram of sugar, and 9 grams of protein. You can eat them right out of the wrapper or lightly toast them. The only question is, which flavor? Strawberry or brown sugar cinnamon? They're available at eatlegendary.com and Amazon. Whether your goal is to build muscle or burn fat, you'll find everything you need at Redcon One. Need help getting a good night's sleep? Try Fade Out, or the most popular pre-workout supplement on the market today, Total War. Sign up for their new Transformation Challenge and win $10,000. Or shop for apparel that people at the gym will know that you are serious about your training. Need a testosterone booster that works? Check out Boomstick. Whatever you need, you'll find the best quality supplements on the market at Redcon One. Go to redcon1.com. That's REDCON, the number 1.com, or go to superhumanradio.net and click the Redcon One banner ad today. TaylorMade Health is focused on making sure you're able to perform and look your best. They are a leader in game-changing supplements and cosmetic products. Whether you want to increase strength, expedite recovery, facilitate soft tissue repair, or reduce deep wrinkles, TaylorMade Health has you covered. TaylorMade Health is also the home to Dr. Seed's products such as BPC, BPC Plus, and the Chill Pill. All of my listeners can now get 20% off their first order with code TRY20. That's TRY20. This code can even be used on subscription orders. Visit shrnetwork.biz/try20 today and use code TRY20 for 20% off your first order.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
You've heard us talk about the power of copper peptides here on the show. Now try it yourself with RestoraCell's amazing new skincare line built on the power of blue copper peptides. All natural, organic, made in the USA, and safe for sensitive skin. Save 30% on their Stem Cell Awakening Serum. Go to shrnetwork.biz/RestoraCell. That's RestoraCell and use code SHR to save 30% off. Remodel your skin today.
Spit that out right now. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Welcome back. We're joined by Jonathan Levitt. How you doing, Jonathan?
I'm doing well. How about yourself? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Hey, your mic is nice. I like your mic. It sounds really good. lots of bass tones. That's great. So let's talk about Inside Tracker. What was the genesis of this project? What were you shooting for when everybody got together and said, let's start this company?
So Inside Tracker is the product of Dr. Gil Blander, who had a death in the family very early on when he was about 9 years old. And a 9-year-old Gil said, I want to live forever. And so he's dedicated his life to the anti-aging process and spent a number of years as a scientist publishing papers, and sort of got to this inflection point where he decided, I can continue to be a scientist and publish papers that a bunch of scientists will see, or I can start a company and access tens of millions and hundreds of millions and eventually billions of people to have a substantial impact. And he chose the latter. Fortunately, that was back in 2009. I joined the company in 2014, and it's been really cool to see the growth since then of essentially answering the question, how do we live longer, better, healthier lives from a personalized approach?
So we had a company come on last year from the UK. I'm not going to mention their name. And we had a horrible situation because we had a lot of listeners very, very disappointed because they came on with a doctor and another scientist, and they made all sorts of claims that by doing this epigenetic testing and this new style of parsing data, 2 million data points, and you'd end up with a digital copy of you that you can now look at and make changes and slow the aging, sidestep diseases that were heading your way. And when we all got our labs back, it didn't say anything that we should do. Everyone got the same thing. It said, eat more fish, which to me was, come on, that's all epigenetics is telling me. And it gave us a biological age, which mine happened to be less than my chronological age. So I was happy with that, but everybody was disappointed. And when I started to do research, what I learned was they told me they didn't have enough patient data information yet to be able to say, oh, we predict that. And in their defense, 23andMe started out this way too. As 23andMe became had more data, then they could say, hey, all the people that have this allele seem to develop fibromyalgia. So you may be someone, but it wasn't until they compiled all that patient data that they could make predictions and recommendations. But you guys do it completely differently, don't you?
Yeah, we take a bit of a different approach. We not only attempt to create science, we actually use science that already exists to say, here's what to do. So essentially, our platform is a database of PubMed studies. So we have tens of thousands of studies that have been loaded into this expert engine or expert system where you tell us about yourself. So your your demographics, your food preferences, your food frequency, the supplements you take, the exercise you do. And then we use a blood test to evaluate the impact of all of that. And we're looking at optimal zones. So our value add is the optimal zones and the next steps after the blood test. So we don't need tens of thousands of data points or millions of data points in order to service one person, because we're saying,
no, really, and I wanted you to say this. I didn't want to say it, because what you guys are doing that's different than anybody else out there that's claiming to be able to run these kind of very insightful tests on people to help them choose their path moving forward, is you're treating it like individual medicine, which we keep talking about how important individualized medicine is. You guys have come up with a way to take this approach and individualize it. I think that's fascinating, personally. I just do.
Totally. So it's fascinating because when people bring this data to their doctor, the doctor will say one of two things. One, this is the future of medicine. Thank you for helping me help you. Or two, this is my job. Back off. Now, the people who fall in the latter category have no training in nutrition and don't really know what to do from a proactive health standpoint. They're there to help you when you're sick. That's the job of a doctor. The future job of the doctor, in our opinion, should be to help guide. But again, physicians are not trained as dietitians. They're not trained to teach you what to eat. That's not their swim lane. And so what we're doing is we're saying, okay, who is Carl? How does Carl go about his day? How does Jonathan go about his day? And what should he do differently as a result of all of this science? So again, what we're doing is we're taking data, running it through these algorithms, and yielding an output of do these three things to have the highest impact on helping you feel and fuel better. It's simple. It's like it's not groundbreaking. It's from a computational standpoint, it's more than a single human can do. And that's the point. It's taking dozens of inputs, dozens of variables, running it against research, and telling you eat fish twice a week, take a garlic supplement once a day, and add.
See, that's gold.
Blah, blah, blah.
This is gold, folks. This is where we were all let down by the epigenetic testing. They could not make any recommendations at all. They didn't try to. They didn't apologize for not doing it, even though they promised that they would. This is so I have a lot of people in this audience that bought a lot of those epigenetic tests, and I'm telling you, this is worth your dollars. I actually just had my blood work done, and I have to just upload my existing data from my 23andMe. And the next interview we do, we're going to talk about me. And I want to talk openly and honestly. I already tell you that my testosterone levels are really, really high because I use a bit more than the HRT dose. But my doctor knows that, and I'm fine. But what I want to say that I was fascinated by, and actually, I was excited about that. You guys measure not just ferritin but TIBC. I've been talking on this show for a decade now about iron, and ferritin is not an adequate marker of iron. One molecule of ferritin can carry anywhere from 1 molecule of iron to 60,000 molecules of iron, number one. So ferritin in of itself, you could have high ferritin, but every one of those molecules has 1 molecule of iron. You don't have high iron. You don't have iron overload. The other problem with just looking at ferritin is a chaperone protein. And it's made by the liver. And it's made by the liver regardless of iron intake. If you take high doses of vitamin C, your doctor will say, oh my God, your ferritin levels are so high. Meanwhile, you don't have high iron. The only way to know is total iron binding capacity, which looks at ferritin and actual unbound and bound iron in the blood. And this is a much better indicator of iron overload. And why am I making a big deal about this? Because I sincerely believe, after doing this show for 16 years, that iron overload is one of the most age progressing things in your body. It's rust, and it's highly oxidative. It's highly injurious to tissue. And it's one of the things that when women go through menopause, they catch up to men, and all of a sudden they start aging really, really fast. And it's why I donate blood every couple months. And I do, because I eat beef every single day. But when I saw that, I was heartened. I was like, wow, this company gets it.
Yeah. So we work with a lot of endurance athletes in particular who experience fatigue, and they go to their doctor, and the doctor will run an serum iron test. Again, not their swim lane. And you can have, so building on that, when ferritin could be high and causing these problems, but you could have a high serum iron but have low ferritin as well, and never get it tested and be exhausted.
Right.
And
chaperone, right.
So for the reasons of it being high, for the reasons of it being low, we look at the full panel. We have about 5 or 6 metrics that we test in the iron panel as a way to understand, is it absorption? Is it intake? What do we actually do? And then again, we can tell you. So we give a group score on the iron group because we have all these metrics. Now, I spent 2 months at 10,000 feet out in Colorado, and let me tell you, the iron values from 2 months of living and training at 10,000 feet are fascinating. And to be able to see the spike in red blood cells and hematocrit and hemoglobin and having everything working properly was validating to my experience of, I feel great. Well, why do I feel great? What's working? And the test allowed me to see, what exactly it was that was contributing to feeling good.
So the other thing is that you do a full CBC blood panel, and you look at other things as well, like albumin. And when I saw the albumin, I wanted to ask, are you guys using the Horvath metrics at all in any of your calculations?
So we're not. We're speaking with Dr. Horvath about a potential integration in our inner age metric, but right now it's not included. No.
Okay. Because that would allow you to give people their biological age that they're all looking for, and which is really meaningless at the end of the day. Really.
So we have a metric called inner age, and for men it's a calculation coming from 18 values, and for women it's coming from 14. And this product was born out of data science. So we looked at what are the metrics that are correlated with aging from our data set, and what can we do about it? So how do we assign a baseline and then allow someone to do a follow-up test, and in between give them guidance on what to do? So I joined Insight Tracker when I was 24. My inner age was 31. Fast forward 7 years, and my inner age basically didn't change in those 7 years. It remained 31. So it's to say I'm getting chronologically older, but internally I'm doing things that are working. Now, I tested recently and I'm 25. So it's like, it's not just staying the same, but it's actually getting better. So we're essentially showing you what it is that's contributing to your own personal longevity, and then giving guidance on the metrics or the actions that you can use to take the years back. So you get all these other epigenetic clocks or inner age tests or biological age tests, and as you said, they come with just a number, and it's up to you to figure it out. We will never test something just to test something and deliver numbers. We will only test and provide analysis on things that we're going to give guidance on. So you get the test, and then you get guidance on what to do with it, and then you do another test, and you see that you've taken 3 years back, which isn't to say you'll live 3 years longer or die 3 years earlier, but it's that trend. And we want to show that you're trending in the right direction, or that this is a wake-up call and it's really time for you to take control. And here's how to do it.
So insulin resistance is the number one killer of Americans today, and probably globally. We say it's heart disease, but heart disease is a result of unchecked rising blood sugar, unchecked rising insulin, and the metabolic changes that occur in that environment, whether it be angiotensin converting enzyme / high blood pressure, or inflammatory markers that injure the intima of arteries and allow plaque to build up. It all starts with metabolic dysfunction, all of it. And so really, if the authorities having power to identify the trending deaths in the United States were honest, they'd say, oh, type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance is the number one killer because all the other things are just splinter factions of
downline.
why you died from it. With that being said, do you take a special look at insulin sensitivity and the multitude of things that influence insulin sensitivity to give people a snapshot of like, hey, you can probably reverse your type 2 diabetes if you do these 4 things?
So we don't look at insulin. It may be something we add in the future. Currently, we look at glucose and hemoglobin A1C. We have data that supports, that basically says if you are, basically we looked at our data set to answer the question, does a personalized nutrition platform work? So does Inside Tracker work? And our data suggests that we are able to take somebody who is diabetic and move them into pre-diabetic stage, and someone who is pre-diabetic and to move them into normal. And we've done that enough times to have statistical power to say this platform works, right? The majority of Americans do not eat enough soluble fiber. And if everybody listening to this podcast were to add oatmeal into their daily routine, the world would be a much better place. And so we've looked at what are some of the strongest recommendations that we have across the board. And adding oatmeal daily is the most effective that we've seen. It impacts glucose and the lipids, and 82% of Americans have compromised glucose levels, which leads to exactly what you're saying, compromised longevity, downline impact of every other issue. And if we can just get a grasp on this and move everybody who's diabetic into pre-diabetic and pre-diabetic into normal and normal into optimal, just from a simple, change or two, by adding a little more fiber and maybe, getting 30 minutes a day of exercise, then this horrible strain on the healthcare system from all this, we feel preventable disease, could be reduced.
I want to make a real brief argument why you should include insulin and not depend on A1C. And hopefully this will influence someone to at least research and say, did that idiot really know anything about what he's talking about? First of all, hyperinsulinemia is the real reason, not hyperglycemia, for all of the blood vessel damage and neuropathy in the United States today. Number 2, looking at blood sugar, somebody's got blood sugar of 82. You're like, oh, that's really good. But if their pancreas is pumping out every bit of insulin they can make to keep it at 82, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when they crash and burn. So knowing what insulin production is and looking at it juxtaposed against glucose levels gives us a better snapshot. The other thing is there's a lot of intelligent discussion being made by lots of intelligent people, not me, that the metabolically deranged, their red blood cells may not last 90 days. And so if you have somebody whose A1C is 9, and we know like 5.5 or lower is good, they don't look really scary. But if you've learned that because of their metabolic derangement, red blood cell turnover is every 40 days. And then if you extend it out to 90, you go, oh my God, these people are 22. But their red blood cells aren't lasting long enough for us to see that glycated accumulation. So I hope that you guys add insulin or C-peptide to your testing so that we have a better snapshot. Because I really think that everybody's pre-diabetic today. They just don't know it because their pancreas is keeping it hidden. They're producing enough insulin to get by. But that's just my opinion.
So this is one of the ones we're looking to add, and our barometer of or our sort of limiting factor of adding more things into the platform is having evidence-based recommendations to influence the changes. So we're getting there. We do have the ability to add it to those who purchase a test from us. I think it's a $24 add-on, so it's not cheap, but it's not wildly expensive like some of the other ones. So we do have the capability of adding that on.
Peter K says, what if TIBC and UBIC are high above range and ferritin is below normal range and iron is within normal range? I don't, can you answer that? Can you speak to that at all?
So I can't speak to that. I'm not on our nutrition team. But the way it works is our system can receive data and translate that into here's what to do.
Okay, there you go. And that's the best we can do with that one. So how many different tests do you offer? And the website, the link to get to their website and get a 25% deal is shrnetwork.biz/inside tracker. I'm looking to see if we have a code also. No, if you got to use that, you got to use that link, shrnetwork.biz/inside tracker, and you'll save 25% off. So how many different tests do you actually offer?
So we have a handful. We have two that I suggest as the main options. So Ultimate and Essentials. Ultimates are most popular and most comprehensive. It looks at 42 values, ranging from basics like glucose and cholesterol to testosterone and cortisol and inflammation, and this full iron panel that we discussed, and quite a bit more, of course. That one's $589 per test. With that discount, comes to $441. Essentials is a selection of 12 metrics that statistically most people need to work on. So we narrowed it down into a slimmer package of high impact metrics. So this one is $189, and with that discount, it comes to $141.
That's very reasonable.
And yes, very reasonable. I mean, you could pay $200 for vitamin D alone if you ask for that through insurance, and you get slapped with a bill. And that's included in that test. Ferritin's included in that test. 90% of the recommendations that can be seen in, those who go with Essentials can see up to 90% of the recommendations that those who go with Ultimate can see. So it's $400 less in cost, but you're not necessarily, missing a whole lot in terms of guidance. Right. If you want a full test, go with Ultimate. If you want a cost-effective way to, do this quarterly, for example, go with Essentials. So
you said quarterly, because my next question was, because we're going to talk to the audience about my results when it comes back. So I start to follow the suggestions. How long does it take to start to see beneficial results and therefore retest?
So it really depends, as is with the answer on anything about nutrition. Our average retest is every 7 months. Depending on the goals, some people choose to do it quarterly. When I first started testing, I felt an impact within about a week. I had very low vitamin D, and just taking that for a week, I was sleeping better than I had been in years. So it really depends on what you're working on. It can be a couple weeks, it can be a couple months, or you could just be improving health metrics that you might not feel different today, but have an impact, 50 years down the road.
Right. Again, the link is shrnetwork.biz/inside tracker. Go check out the various tests. The Essentials with the 25% off discount is very reasonable. And let's be honest, so many of us take things and we really have no idea if they're helping us at all. Right, I would say 90% of us buy supplements because we read an article and we don't even know if we're low in that, and we take it and we don't know if it's doing anything. Unless you're afraid to save money, like, oh, I did the Inside Tracker Essentials, and I just gave up taking like 60% of my supplements because they're not doing anything good for me. In fact, some of them may be hurting me. Oh, wow, I don't have to buy those anymore. So
the number of people that are taking a multivitamin that probably don't need to be taking one, it's astounding. And you're paying, $20-$30 a month for something that you just don't need.
Or, some of us, I take, I haven't taken it in the past couple months, but for quite a while I was taking rapamycin twice a month, 6 milligrams twice a month. And that was very expensive. I mean, that's a drug. So my audience is serious about their health and their longevity. And I think that this is a great way and will fulfill on the promises made by the epigenetic testing people who gave us nothing. Everybody I talked to said, well, it suggested I eat more fish. I'm like, really? That's like the lamest thing. Like, okay, I eat salmon 4 times a week. How much more can I eat it? You know, it's like, so.
Yeah, and the whole point of it is, what do I do differently, right? We're not going to tell you to eat more, sleep more, and exercise more. We're going to tell you how to modulate what you're currently doing because we know what you're doing. And so, that's the goal.
One more time, shrnetwork.biz/inside tracker, 25% off. I had my lab work done last week. I have to upload my 23andMe into the system, and then we will have a follow-up show where I talk about my own results, what I learned, and what is recommended that I change. But I'm excited about this. I was not excited about or after I got my results from the epigenetic test at all. Not at all. I felt like it was a waste of money, and a lot of my audience was pissed off. And I understand why. This is different, folks. This is very, 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 very different. This is what we wanted originally. This is it. Jonathan, I want to thank you for being on the show today.
Of course. Thanks for having us on.
Now, will you be back on with me when I have my results to talk about, or will somebody else come on?
My guess is it'll be one of our dietitians who is much more credentialed to speak to things like that.
Excellent. I can't wait to do it. I really can't. I'm 63. Well, I'll be 63 in June. Elisa gets mad at me. She's like, you're not 63 yet. It's like a month away. Most people are like, I'm not 63 until the day after my birthday. You know, it's like they hold on. I'm like, no, I'm proud I'm 63. I'm strong. I'm active. You know, I'm living a great life. So I'll be 63 in June, but I tell people I'm 63 now. And I can't wait to see my results. Listen, thanks for being here. More importantly, thanks for being a sponsor. I tell my audience all the time, if you get anything from this show, thank me by thanking the sponsors, by patronizing the sponsors, because they are the fuel that makes this engine run. Jonathan, we'll talk again soon, okay?
Sounds good. Thanks.
Take care. And we will see everybody tomorrow with more Superhuman Radio. Thank you so much for being here today and participating. We'll see you tomorrow.